for exercise, for how it's important for creating a lighter Main Street. We're going to talk about active transportation, walking, biking, navigating space on a wheelchair. And here to do that today, actually, before I introduce our speaker today, I just want to note one logistical piece, and we checked in with folks in the room to make sure that they're aware that we will be going for a walk after our presenter delivers some remarks. We'll actually be going out to downtown Keene for an exercise, and we are going to attempt to bring the virtual audience along with us. And I'm 90% confident that that's going to work. I tested it twice, both on sunny days. Today's cloudy, so who knows? But please bear with us as we try to bring you along for the ride. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our presenter and session leader today. Mark Fenton is an active transportation expert that has worked all across the country, and in fact, across the world. I saw he did some work in Australia, so he's worked in all different types of communities, helping them understand why walking and active transportation is so critical for all types of communities, including rural ones. So please join me in giving our presenter a warm round of applause.
Very kind. Very generous, given that I haven't said anything yet. I can really think, and we'll see, right? So, yes. The whole time, I'm not any good at that. Widen that camera lens right now, my friend, because I will have almost no possible likelihood of staying right here.
We're good.
Sorry. And so again, Mark Fenton from the greater Boston area. I live in a small town, Situate, Mass., which is about 30 miles south of Boston. And interestingly, we grew up in a very small town up in western New York State. And the reason I mentioned that Brockport is the name. It's along the Erie Canal, west of Rochester, New York. The primary industries in that area are dairy farming and apple orchards, just to give you a sense of scale. And I say that because lots of time when you hear, oh, this one was active transportation guys, and he's going to give us the Boston, Massachusetts bike lane pitch, or the Portland, Oregon, Boulder, Colorado active transportation pitch. I think this work is, if not as, perhaps even more relevant in small and rural communities where the fundamental infrastructure was historically built very much on a walkable scale, right? If you think about small town America, Central Green, think of Keene, think of small towns across the country. There would be a Central Green. Most of the businesses and the churches and the town hall would have been arrayed around that. There would have been a compact batch of houses, and then there would have been agricultural land around that, or open space or forest. But that original fabric was eminently walkable, and I would argue very healthy. And I broadly define health. I want to make sure clear that when we look at a picture like this of Main Street in Keene, my last visit a couple of years ago, if you could talk about obviously the physical health of people being out and moving under their own power, great. You could talk about the environmental health of if more trips could be on foot and by bike, then we've got fewer greenhouse gas emissions, fewer nitrous oxides. If we don't have to park as many cars because we walk and bike more, then we reduce stormwater runoff, which in a world where we get droughts and then inundating rains, that's only going to be more important. So we could look at environmental health. We could look at the economic health of those businesses. And the advantage of having housing above retail, right, in Main Street, and a downtown business district like that, and what that does to those local businesses. So we can talk about economic health. So I just want to be clear, my perspective is I work a lot with public health. Much of my work nationally and internationally is funded by organizations like the Centers for Disease Control. In Australia, I was there for the Heart and Stroke Foundation. But we were talking about urban planning and transportation networks and active transportation because we all believe it's central to that kind of health, public health, but these other definitions of health as well. So having said that, what I'd love to do is break our session into two parts, answer a couple of these common questions that I run into. Sort of, I'm going to ask you to do a little mental exercise with me, including our virtual visitors, those participating virtually, and talk about the elements of healthy design, where the research sort of steers us. And then the common challenges I run into when working with communities, especially small and rural communities, which tend to see themselves as less resourced. Hey, we're not New York City. We can't do what Michael Bloomberg did and, restripe bike lanes everywhere and change Central Square, right? We all heard those stories. We can't do all of that. But more importantly, they don't even have the technical know-how. I think it's going to cost too much for our community. And by the way, I live in a small conservative community where change is scary, and anything different than we've done it for the last 150 years must obviously be wrong, right? So I'm not being entirely facetious here. That's really an issue. And then the last thing I want to do is talk about some of how we overcome those is to actually try stuff. And one of the things we try is getting people out for walks. I call them I-2 audits, inclusive, interdisciplinary, walkable audits. We use all of that language to make sure somebody that wheels or uses an assistive device, somebody who's visually impaired or blind, everybody feels included, and we go out and actually experience the space. That's kind of the layout. And again, forewarning, our goal would be to get out for a walk. It looks like all of my arrangements that I had planned to have worked, and the rain stopped. And I want you to know I went to great lengths for that for all of you. So that's where we are. But here's my opening quiz. I'm going to ask you to do a little mental exercise. And indeed, I'd ask you to close your eyes to do this. This will seem low-key, just go with me, all right? Because you're going to close your eyes, and I want you to think back to one of your earliest fond recollections of being physically active when you were a little kid. And I mean, think like those images you just saw on the screen, not high school sports, I mean, little kid. Early fond recollection. And in so doing, I want you to think about where you were, who you were with, and what kind of activities you were doing. And as you're thinking about this, folks online, Zooming, you write in the chat right now, just 3 or 4 words, no more than 4 words, what those recollections are. Okay, and then I'm going to ask you guys, when you have one in your mind, open your eyes. So when your eyes are open, I'll make a chat. You've got an idea of yours. Would a couple of people be willing to toss out their recollections? What did you think? Nice and loud, big voice.
Sledding.
Sledding.
Jumping off the front porch.
Jumping off the front porch. Street hockey. Pickup games, no umpire or referee or anything, right? Yeah.
Playing tag in the yard.
Tag in the yard.
Riding with your slow
Right.
errands.
Okay, riding the trike right in the neighborhood.
Jumping off the porch and playing ball in the street.
The pickup game in the street? Oh, nice. What did you do when a car came? She said, playing ball in the street. What happened when the car came? You got out of the way. And you went back right into the street again, didn't you?
My friends and I used our bicycles to build a toll booth.
Built a toll booth on the street. Yeah, that's right. An early entrepreneur, obviously.
But they're both on the sidewalk. There's bicycling, it's hard to go.
Yeah.
And also pogo sticking.
So she said, biking as far as we allowed to go, pogo sticking, and I'm sure you're counting how many bounces you can do, right? Trying to set the record. Sure. Did you do what we're doing? We're doing an early fond recollection of being physically active when you were a little kid. I'll come back to you. Back here, what you have?
Riding the bike and chasing the ice cream truck on the back.
Riding the bike, chasing the ice cream truck,
Chasing waves on the beach.
up and down on the beach. Get any?
I do, but I need a microphone.
Okay, Todd's got one for you.
Okay, so here's what we've got. Double jump rope, that was for me. From Lillian on the playground in elementary school. From Addie chasing pigeons in Barcelona.
Nice.
Addie obviously had very interesting job.
Yeah.
Carrie B playing soccer. Christine biking for miles and climbing trees.
Tree climbing, right. A couple more people, please.
Riding my wagon.
Riding the wagon, you'll red wagon?
Yeah.
Which are, by the way, I'm a mechanical engineer, I'm gonna tell you they are totally unstable. Because as soon as you want to get about 40 degrees of turn right, it just boom, wipes out. Horrible. What do you got there?
Ice skating on double-bladed skates on the river.
On a frozen river or pond, right? Yeah, ice skating, frozen pond.
Running through the park across the street.
Running in the park across the street, back in the back there, you guys. Got one?
Bicycle and football.
With football, we have massive games. What did you do when you didn't have enough players on the field?
I grew up, I had siblings, and I grew up on a farm, so everyone's always around. So
Oh, you had enough ice?
never was really a problem.
So if we didn't have enough base runners, did anybody ever remember having ghost runners? Does anybody remember doing that? That's kind of universal memory. A lot of people that play pickup games in the neighborhood. You were short a couple people, you could have a ghost runner on setting. Do you have a memory, Michelle?
Swings.
Swing set, swinging? Great. How about you guys in the back?
Foursquare and climbing up a big boulder downtown.
Climbing a big boulder downtown,
Riding my bike and playing flashlight tag.
flashlight tag in the neighborhood. Okay, so, this may seem like a hokey exercise, but let's think about this for a minute. How many of you thought about things, hands up for this, that were structured, had to have an adult in uniform, had to be an umpire, a referee, had to have a scheduled time and place, had to pay money to do it? How many thought about things, how many of you walk your bike to school or to a downtown or a nearby park or playground or something like that? Look around, watch each other while we're doing this, not me so much. A lot of hands just went up. How many of you explored outside without adult supervision? How many remember playing games with no formal uniform on prior birthday? Remember, you specifically mentioned pick up speed hop here. How many specifically spent time with kids of different ages and maybe had boys and girls playing together? Look around. So you weren't in U12 soccer with kids of the same age, only of the same gender, right? Playing in the water. How many were drawn to water? An ocean, a lake, a river, how about just a stream? Or if you lived in a city, it might have been the fire hydrant when they opened it up. How many had a wheeled vehicle of some sort? Scooter, skateboard, bicycle, roller skates. Okay, last one. How many of you specifically remember doing stuff you could not have gotten away with if an adult had been present? Tell the truth. Building a ramp with cinder blocks and plywood to make a jump, right? I'm sure that was sanctioned by mom today. Here's the point. How many of you, if you'll allow me to use the term apart here, remember being to some degree or another a free-range kid?
Yeah.
Who's a free-range kid? Hands up. This is not a rhetorical question. I want to see your hands up. Okay. Last two are the really important. Those are, by the way, free-range kids in the town I live in now, Situate, Mass. Jumping off the bridge is a local rite of passage because you have to know what the tide is high enough because that's a tidal estuary. Okay. A lot of hands went up for free-range kids. How many of you, if you're really honest, believe the majority of kids growing up today are free-range kids? Hands up for that. So just to be clear, not a hand in the room is up. Just want everybody to see that. Last question. How many think it's good for America's youth that we're raising a robust and healthy generation by virtue of them not being free-range? Good thing we don't have free-range kids anymore. My last question is this. What exactly are you doing about it? Let's make clear what we know. Every time I can talk to a room full of transportation engineers, planners, I'm an engineer by training actually, and I'm guiding this field in that direction. I can be talking to city councilors, mayors, and that's always what I am. What are you doing about it? You have a responsibility. You recall having been free range. You agree kids today are less so, and it is not good for them. What are you going to do about it? I believe the very premise of much of the work going on at this conference is about restoring the world for free range kids, which for me, they are an indicator species, right? Because if it's free range kids, then it means probably my 85-year-old parents could live free range in that community. If the kid can walk to a corner store, a park, playground, his friend's house, then my parents can probably walk to a pharmacy, a corner store, a coffee shop, maybe get to transit that gets them to their health care, right? And somebody with disabilities, somebody that needs a mobility device, or somebody who's visually impaired or blind, might be able to navigate that landscape. Those kids sort of set the tone. So that's why I talk like this. By the way, lest you think I'm just making this up, we've got solid data that tells us dramatic change in just a very short period of time. Look at pedestrians from 1970 to 2000, the percentage of kids walking and biking to school. The green bars on the graph here went from 40% down to only about 15%, while the percentage of kids being driven to school over that same time span went from 15% to almost half. And over that same 30 years is when we saw the child obesity epidemic go through the roof. That's not coincident. If you get in the habit of putting the kids in the backseat of the car, even when they are going to physical activity, if you're wealthy enough to have the wherewithal to be in the U12 soccer program, which is not a very egalitarian or equitable way to get kids physical activity, because you have to have transportation, you have to have the money, you have to have the access to the opportunity. But even when they're going to that, we're driving them, right? And this is what happens. When we ask parents, why don't you let your kid walk to school like Mark Fenton did from 3rd grade on, only with friends or no adult supervision? What's their first answer? Not safe. Staring at the big thick mustaches are hiding behind every tree. I'm not making light. I know there are bad people in the world. With the actual increase over that 30-year time span of abductions of children by unknown assailants, does anybody know? It's 0. Over the time span we're talking about, no change at all. That special issue from Time Magazine and lots of others have explored this question. That's not what changed. You'd actually have to look at this special issue of Time Magazine to know what's changed in that 30 years, which is that a disease, when I began working with public health people 25 years ago, we used to call adult onset diabetes. Does anybody remember that or heard that term? Adult onset diabetes. Clinicians cannot use the term anymore because it is not only relegated to adults. So they now use the technical term, which is type 2 diabetes. That's right, type 2, between us and 3rd graders, which we did not think was physiologically possible 20 years ago. But now, based on just 2 risk factors, our genetics have not changed that much in 30 years. The 2 risk factors are diet and exercise. By virtue of less access to healthy food or less consumption of healthy food choices and less physical activity, this is what we see. The CDC now estimates 1 in 3 kids born today will have type 2 diabetes in their lifetime if we stay on the current trajectory. If you want to crush a healthcare system, that will do it. Forget about whether it's a single payer system or a market-based system or the hybrid we're trying to develop. None of that will matter. I know this is a real downer, but I think we need to understand the scope of that public health challenge and why I'm a frothed enough fanatic for environments where kids can be physically active as part of their daily lives again. And I think, this is the fundamental message. We know this from the Centers for Disease Control. The Surgeon General published stuff that says this. And indeed, they say that every adult could average about 30 minutes of moderate to physical activity a day or more. About a half an hour walk would do the job. We reduce risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, clinical depression, dementia in old age, and a growing list of cancers. Like every year, another epidemiological study will tell us another type of cancer for which risk is reduced if you're physically active. That's the good news. The bad news is everybody assumes these kinds of images. I gotta be on a sports team, I gotta go to the gym, lift weights, do CrossFit, right? When in fact, this counts. And people forget this. Incidental physical activity, or what we would call active transportation, counts 20 to 30 minutes a day. It's quite sufficient. In fact, there are a number of studies that suggest it's very powerful because it's done routinely. Right? An active commuter, somebody who uses active transportation as part of a daily trip, walking a child to school or to daycare or to riding your bike to the bus stop to take the bus to work. By the way, there's good research that says the third mode, transit, is also more physically active because of what you tend to do at either end of the transit trip. You end up doing some walking to meet that 30-minute total. So that's the good news. The bad news is we're not. We built a world that discourages us from routine physical activity. Our jobs are increasingly sedentary, so is our recreation is increasingly screen-based. Think about how much that worsened during the pandemic. But I would suggest you, even in small and rural communities, I can find this lineup of cars at the elementary school at arrival and dismissal time, right? And I see so many communities across the country where Main Street is the state highway and it's been designed with one thing in mind, and that is moving the trucks through, right? Where Main Street has been totally dehumanized and the entire intent is to just maintain traffic flow. And that's really a problem. This, by the way, Loudville, New York, where I'm happy to tell you, and I'm not going to take credit for it, but we were involved in workshops that then ended up doing a lane reduction on that road and turning it back into a street that felt more like a main street and less like a highway. Mark, this is all city stuff. You're talking about the urban population. In rural environments, people are active because we're out in the great outdoors, right? The national data says exactly the opposite. If you look at physical activity attainment, the dotted line here is the rural the percentage of the population in rural settings meeting those physical activity guidelines 30 minutes a day. And the dashed line is urban. So here's the average for the country. And because there's less rural population, obviously, the average is closer to the urban attainment. Two important things about this graphic. First of all, the rough figure is about 20%. That is 1 in 5 people are even meeting the guideline. Wait for it. That's not even accurate because this is based on what's called self-report data. The CDC collects is these telephone surveys they do of the U.S. population, and we tend to answer, when we're in a telephone survey, what the person wants to hear, right? Yeah, we went for a walk last Thanksgiving. Yeah, I get 30 minutes of physical activity, right? We remember those short about. But the bottom line is, if this actually were based on objective measurement, like web pedometers or accelerometers or other measurement devices that we use in public health, the number would be closer to 10% or lower. And again, let me reiterate, rural populations tend to be worse on this because, as you're probably all well aware, the things that made rural populations at one time more physically active, like agriculture, have become so automated that, in fact, that's not happening. The occupations in rural environments are no more physically active than in urban now. So you see, if anything, the greater distances that have to be traveled, less access to daily needs, less walkable environments, make rural populations less routinely active. Is everybody good with this? This is an important foundation for our conversation. By the way, if you looked at obesity rates, you would see the exact reverse, right? Obesity rates higher in rural populations and small communities compared to more urban. So, okay, smart and fast talking guy, what's the research tell us? Can you build settings where people tend to get more physical activity by virtue of the design of the community? The answer is absolutely, positively yes. So I've spent the last 20 years studying and participating in research studies and contributing articles. And I'm going to boil all of that down to 4 slides. I think 4 things characterize settings where you tend to see people be more physically active as part, in particular, of routine active transportation. 1, there's a greater variety of different kinds of destinations in proximity. What a planner would call a mix of land uses. The greater the land use mix, the more we tend to see people walking, bicycling, and taking transit. I don't think this shocks anybody. I've got neighborhood elementary school nearby, more of the kids can walk and bike to it. If I've got a mixed-use district like this, where many of my essential needs are right there, and by the way, I could even live in an apartment just upstairs or only a block away in a compact neighborhood, I would tend to walk and bike to more of my destinations. That's what the research tells us. Even pop-up destinations, like the picture in the top right, count toward that. You're really good with this? Number one, mix of land use. Number two, the connected network of active transportation facilities is comprehensive and in good shape. And it connects those different land uses. So we have sidewalks and bicycle lanes and multi-use pathways, a transit system that the community is dense enough and large enough to support that. But remember, yellow school buses are a form of mass transit, right? That counts toward that total. The dial rider or on-demand service for seniors, people with disabilities, those are all forms of transit. So even in small and rural communities, don't tell me our towns are small and transit. You don't have a dial ride, you have a senior shuttle, you have, anything like that, you have yellow school buses, you have a form of transit. Third, the actual design of settings rewards you rather than punishes you for being outside of a car. It actually feels good to be a pedestrian on a bicycle. The details are really hard to parse out. What's most important in the picture on the left? The width of the sidewalk, the bike rack, the water fountain, the shade trees, the fact that there's a seating area, the fact that the buildings are up at the sidewalk, not behind the parking lot. Well, the answer is yes. All of those, right? It's not any one. Right? The amalgam of those details. But I will say this. You're seeing some level of innovation in local zoning ordinances around this. You know what the standard Dollar type store looks like, right? On a concrete pad, setback, parking lot out front, no pedestrian connections. I mean, you want the minimalist expenditure. However, if you change the zoning ordinance, as they did in this period, require the building to be brought up, maybe some appurtenances like, awnings, a planting box, a bike rack, pedestrian-oriented entrance, and require the developer to continue the sidewalk network, they'll do it if that's what the zoning requires. They won't if you don't ask for it or demand it, right? Build it in. So that's a Dollar General, and it's a nice little one. Even this Walmart, which tend to be the worst, right, as far as it can be on the edge of town, setback, parking lot, a dominant architectural feature. At very least, there's a high-quality pedestrian connection that allows my mom, who has to take the bus to it, because she's 85, she doesn't drive there anymore, to safely walk from the bus stop to the front of the building without playing frogger across that parking lot. So we can even think of ways we might retrofit suburbia here. And last but not least, it's got to be fully accessible to everybody in the community, all ages and races and incomes and abilities and disabilities. It's got to work for everybody. And that's not just ADA access, you're what we would consider universal accessibility, but it's actually got to work and be desirable and so on. This is a great form of neighborhood traffic calming, a mini circle here on a small community in Wisconsin. And you'll notice this is designed with what are called multiple curbs. So yes, the biggest fire truck in the fleet can still navigate its way through there. The occasional moving van that has to go to this neighborhood. But what it does is it makes sure every car that comes to that intersection doesn't have to stop, because we didn't just default to a four-way stop at the intersection, right? They slow, they navigate around the circle, they don't sit and idle in the neighborhood. So we get the traffic calming effect without the emissions in the neighborhood. So now we're into three big questions. So just to recap, and take a breath here. See, everybody's got a hard question. Those four elements, you see again and again in the research literature. You had said to me, Mark, summarize sort of the biggies. Those are the biggies. Mix of land uses, connectivity and quality of the network, the details of site design to make it rewarding and functional for the pedestrian cyclist, and fully accessible and safe for all. Those are the four things. I can check those four boxes. When I served on my local planning board, that was my mental checklist. Every subdivision we were building, every CVS we tried to find, whatever it was we were trying to do, I was trying to get those four things in place. Questions on that? All right, good. How do we get there? Remember my three questions. I'm a small town. I don't have this kind of technical expertise. I don't know guys who travel all over the world doing zoning ordinances for more walkable communities. Well, there's a lot of good content out there. And one I want to draw your attention to, this is available for free on the website, ruraldesignguide.com. It's called the Small Town and Rural Multimodal Network Guide. Sanctioned by, this is really, 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 really important, the Federal Highway Administration. That's their logo. Because transportation engineers are notoriously reticent about doing anything that's not in the manual. It's not in the AASHTO guide or the manual on uniform traffic control devices, the MUTCD. We're not doing it, right? Well, the fact that this is in FHWA fence sanctioned document says these may be appropriate treatments for your small town or rural community. Go to this website right now, print this thing off, bind it very nicely, and give it to your local engineer and planning department. Actually do 2 copies as a Christmas gift, as an early, really as a late Labor Day gift. Give it to them right now. because every engineer in the country should have this on their desk. Because they show these kinds of things, creative solutions like pedestrian lanes, right? So small rural community way up in northern Panhandle of Idaho, Bonners Ferry, the public works structures here, they talk about striping, they needed some sidewalk here. The high school's out of the view to the right here, there's a neighborhood. There's a lot of need for pedestrian. He said, we don't have the money for the sidewalk right now. And the question was, could we still stripe a pedestrian lane here? And the answer is, yeah, absolutely. Well, people raise the ruckus. He said, the football stadium here on Friday nights when we have home games, people have to park there. And during parent night, parent-teacher night, and when we have our special friend flank and our fall event, we need cars there. So, for 12 days a year, we shouldn't stripe the pedestrian lane? To their credit, Public Works said, we'll make some sandwich board signs and say, parking is okay here on these special event days, and we'll put them out there. But the rest of the time, 350 days of the year, we have a beautifully nice painted pedestrian lane here that takes us a step closer to a more safe environment for pedestrians and cyclists and drivers. This is a really important lesson. Let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Yes, do they want to build a sidewalk there? Yeah. When it happens, it'll happen. When they have the money balance to build it. Another tool in this guide called an advisory shoulder. This is actually a picture from New Hampshire. The idea here is on narrow streets, you don't have high-speed volume, and you don't have room to put sidewalks, you don't have money to build them, you can create a dashed line. It's called an advisory shoulder. It tells people, pedestrians and cyclists will use this. When two vehicles have to pass, they can go into the shoulder. That's why it's a dashed line, right? It's not an uncrossable line. But most of the time, the traffic lines are low enough that you actually have, they can ride the center line, the car can, and then they can actually spread the center line. My point is, these are creative solutions that have historically not been used by engineers because they weren't in the manual. Now they are. There's a manual that says you can do these things. Hudson's in Kansas. This is a tool that I love to see used in small town communities and rural communities. Really effectively 6 lanes here. 2 lanes, 1 in each direction, and 2 parking lanes. People, when we were doing the workshop here, we were out on the walk, and during our workshop said, parents on the left, neighborhood here, school off to the right, don't let the kids walk to school, because crossing this is so hairy, because it's just so many lanes all at once. And add the parking lanes, and it's just a long distance. And I said, this is the kind of road that created this unbelievably simplistic diagram of what we would call a road diet, a lane reduction from 4 to 3. 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane. This is not rocket science. Engineers all over the country are doing it. I'm not particular genius. We're just showing a tool that's in the toolkit. Note that, by the way, by taking only 1 lane in each direction, we have room for a bicycle lane, and then you still have the parking lane over here. Well, Public Works Director was with us on the walk, and he said, if I propose this, people are going to scream bloody murder, the traffic's going to back up at mornings and afternoons when school arrival and dismissal is busy and everything. By the way, note that I'm standing in the middle of the road to take this photo, obviously, so they don't have high traffic volume most of the time, but occasionally it gets busy. He said, however, this entire interdisciplinary group, the economic development coordinator, and the public health person, and the person from the community foundation that sponsored my visit, and local activists, and the planner, they all back me up. When we go to city council with this recommendation, I'll do it. A year later, this road, by the way, he said, this road is due for repaving. Routine repaving. Every year we repave a certain amount. It's this road's turn. A year later, they sent me that photo. Same road. Marginal cost on the paving project was almost 0. No additional cost. Right? It's about where they put the lines. I showed this at a talk at Harvard a couple years ago. Years after this was done. Guy raises his hand because I'm actually a physician who was in a national conference on physicians, cardiac health. I was imploring them to become advocates for active design as cardiac surgeons. So this guy raises his hand, he's a doctor, says, I'm actually at the hospital in Hudson. I thought, oh, geez. It's some horrible story about how bad this would be. We lived in that neighborhood. I would never let my kids cross that street, let alone ride a bike on it. This is so common to traffic, they ride their bikes on it now, and I let them cross the street. I could have wept. I was so psyched. My point here, marginal cost very, very low. What we need to do is the political will. That's what we need to find. And the innovative sort of capacity to do it, it's in that manual, right? It's there. So the local engineer is given license to do it. And I will say this, engineers across the country have historically cared most about these 2 averages. LOS is the level of service. ADT is average daily traffic. So basically, how many cars move down this road and how much delay they experience. That's what level of service is. And this is why we ended up with main streets. This is in Walkable, New York, small town way up in rural New York, upstate New York. That's why this road ends up looking this way. It's about moving the most cars, the most efficient, the most vehicles. But the reality is, we're moving beyond that. And notice that's not a hard line, it's a dashed line. It means those aren't the only thing we have to think about. Another document published by the Federal Highway Administration, available at that website, Federal Highway Administration, there's their logo, the guidebook for developing pedestrian and bicycle performance measures. Did you hear that? The Federal Highway Administration is saying you can look at the performance of the roadway through the lens of how it performs for pedestrians and bicyclists. And these are the kinds of things you might measure as you try to reduce the number of vehicle miles traveled, how much driving you're shifting people to walking and bicycling. How about health and equity outcomes? Can the low-income neighborhood access their essential services by virtue of the redesign here? So when this road gets redesigned, your only concern shouldn't be these acronyms. It can be all of these kinds of things. This is the second thing you should print off for free from the Federal Highways website and make a version of it and give it to your planning department. Questions? These are both fairly recent publications, so don't feel embarrassed if you don't know they exist. But they're really important. By the way, my slides I think will be available also if you're like, I know I talk really fast, I'm like back going through stuff, you can take a look at all of this, right? Billings, Montana, an example of what I'm just talking about, it had been recommended that this area near a school, they put in a curb extension, right? This is rubber bumpers that extend the curb and narrow the crossing to make it safer for kids. Engineering department says, we don't have the money now to dig up the asphalt, put up the concrete with the curb extensions like you see here down Keene. However, we can do this low-cost version. These are just rubber curb stops with signs, paint, see how it works. When this road turns out, two things happen. One, they saw people were using it. Two, as a city, they passed a complete streets ordinance. Complete streets is a fundamental principle that says every time we touch the road, we'll think of all four users: pedestrian, bicyclist, transit, and motor vehicles. Doesn't say we're going to stripe a bike lane everywhere. It says we're going to always ask the question, what is best for all four, not just for cars? How many of you have heard of complete streets before? Just out of curiosity. Okay, so this is a really important, this is an entire movement of the website. There's a lot of good content out there. Bottom line, they passed the complete streets ordinance. When they repaved that road 5 years later, they did this. Turned it into a beautiful complete street, made the curb extensions permanent, added bicycle lanes, high visibility crosswalk, having proven to themselves by virtue of this very inexpensive test, right, that they did, that people would actually use it. My point here is, we don't always have to convince people to come up with the $250,000 that it would cost to reroute the drainage and dig this up and put in the curb extensions right now. More like a couple of grand, maybe a few grand to do that. And some of this stuff probably was sitting in the shed in the public works department, right? They may not have been mad to buy this stuff. Put this out there, prove to themselves it was worth it. So then when they repave the road, the marginal cost of doing this, again, almost no. They're doing the work anyway. We call this routine accommodation. And that's part of my answer to that. It's going to cost too much for a small rural community. We just don't have the resources. It's all well and good for New York, Boston, LA, Chicago, not Seattle, San Francisco, all those communist cities where they do this stuff. We're rural America, we're regular people, we're fairly conservative, and we're not interested because we don't have the dollars. To which I say, you can't afford that. Because I would argue when we do this kind of work, we get what's called the triple bottom line. Not just healthier people, healthier economies, healthier environments. I alluded to this before. We sometimes refer to people, prosperity, and planet. Right? How many small towns in America during COVID tested stuff like this? Right? Put streets and seating out on streets. Widen sidewalks with just cones and so on. Because they didn't need to park anyway. Nobody was driving anywhere. Right? But they created widened sidewalks or bicycle lanes, temporary things like that. To which I then asked, how many are now considering keeping them because they were so economically successful, right? They were so good for those local businesses. And the answer is lots. We've got a lot of evidence that communities are trying to keep these. So the first thing I tell somebody when they say we can't afford to is, I think we can't afford not to. We've got lots of information around how to do it as part of the work you're doing anyway. So this is another document from the FHWA. Again, I got the link here. Incorporating on-road bike networks into resurfacing the button. So when you're doing the work anyway, making it work better, making it a more complete streets. An example would be Berry County, Michigan, where we were doing work, and lots of the roads did not have good shoulders. When they were doing repaving, they made a matter of policy after adopting the complete streets policy that they would have shoulders, which in the rural environment might be the right solution. Maybe the shoulders, we're not going to get a separated sidewalk, right? But maybe a wide shoulder that would allow for a painted bike lane or people walking. Public-private partnerships can be part of the answer. These are two of many communities I've worked in where one of the things they wanted to do was create bicycle racks. So they partnered with vocational schools that have welding programs, asked the students in the school to design and manufacture that. They usually get philanthropic organizations or local businesses to donate money. I can tell you with no small amount of pride, this is my town, Situate, Mass. And they were redoing the library, and we wanted a bike rack out front, and my family chose, as a gift to me, my wife and kids, donated the money for the steel to the South Shore Vocational Technical School. These are all the students who designed this bike rack, and then the town installed it, so that was their contribution. So you've got a tripartite partnership: philanthropy, the schools, and the town getting amazing bike racks. By the way, and this is North Adams, Mass. You don't see that that's an NAMA for North Adams, Mass. How clever, right? So businesses in town wanted the iconic bike rack, so they donated the money for the steel. The kids make it on the town's installing. Just examples. Our town. Does everybody see what this is? Tell me what this creature is.
A shark.
It's a shark, actually. Can you see he's got little sharp teeth that actually, if you look closely, say read, R-E-A-D. And he's chasing two swimmers here. You see that that's a swimmer? And there was some controversy about that, but we donated money. I said, the kids want to do it, they're doing it. I think it's a good joke. And the shark is sort of an iconic thing in our town now. They actually chose this design, and they told us we gave it a lot of thought. We know it at the library, we're gonna have both adults and kids riding, so we should be able to accommodate different height bikes. So the arc of the shark accommodates different sizes. This is so clever, right? These kids got a lot of coverage in the local papers, and it's really we can do this kind of stuff. But I will tell you, there are great documents available. The EPA's Smart Growth Program has an entire battery of documents on smart growth and economic success. So the question being, is there a return on investment? Do local businesses do better when we make better decisions about more walkable, bikeable, and transit served downtown, main streets, even in not big cities, but smaller environments? The answer is yes. We also know people want to live in that, right? The National Association of Realtors and the National Association of Home Builders, these are their two publications, routinely talk about walkability as a saleable attribute. The headline here on the Home Builders magazine is "Walkability: Why We Care and Why You Should Too." And the answer is because it sells, right? And indeed, the National Association of Realtors do an annual survey that asks home buyers, "What is it you're looking for?" And they've always seen answers like proximity to a highway, easy to get on and off, or these services and so on. Recently, over the last decade or so, they've seen this trend toward walkability, where people are saying, I trade off a detached home and a large yard for greater walkability. I value being within easy walking distance of near a park, shops, and daily needs. Sidewalks and places to take walks are important. Although we see millennials answering very strongly about walkability, get this, there's a second age group that's really big on it. Anybody have a guess who? Seniors. Empty nest baby boomers. My peers are saying, I want to be near downtown Keene. Walk to a brew pub, a coffee shop, the theater. I want to be, cultural activities, crime center. I love to not have to start my car for every one of those things. Oh, by the way, some of the essentials like a grocery store, a pharmacy, and a hardware store, right? Basics. Interestingly, they did this study twice in 2020. They did it in February when they normally do it. The pandemic hit, they said, I bet the answer is going to be all different. Everybody's going to want to move to suburbia. Home alone, 2-acre lot, far from people as possible. That's not what they found. Where they wanted to move, wait for it, small communities where they had access to everything they wanted. They didn't have to get in a car and drive to a giant retail center where there'd be all sort of pathogen exchange. I don't want to be in a Walmart or Supercenter. I want to be in the local grocery store in my town that I can walk or ride my bike to. And these attributes were maintained through the pandemic, which was a real shock to some of the people that do this kind of research. So those of you who work in small and rural communities, in as much as the question is, was the pandemic good or bad for them? I don't think it changed people's desirability of being in places where they can walk to a corner store, a coffee shop, or a trail, or a group home. Because that comes up all the time in research. I agree with that. There are studies of street designs. They tend to be in more urbanized areas, but now we're seeing those same researchers move to smaller and smaller communities where, and they make changes, actually do pre and post measures. They take a lane away and add a bicycle lane or a transit lane or better widened sidewalk and so on. One of the iconic study was done in New York City neighborhoods, but now they started repeating the methodology in other communities. But the bottom line is, in this pre-post measurement, what they tend to see is retail revenue and employment go up as you make a street more multimodal. None of which should be shocking, as it means both employees, but in particular customers of a greater range can now access that retail. So this shouldn't be stunning to anybody, but it's great to know we have research. A nice example, I worked with a colleague who worked very close to Sulphur Springs, Texas, a classic kind of county courthouse community, small community in rural Texas, that had, over the years, as we did in so many communities, the entire courthouse square became a big old parking lot. You see in the floor picture here. And all of these streets became one-way pairs, one-way couplets, because what we want to do move traffic in and out of downtown as quickly as possible. To their credit, they did a very active engagement community process. They did a lot of walk audits and so on. This is the square afterwards, huge amount of green space. By the way, a loss on net of maybe 3 or 4 parking spaces. They just did them as on-street sort of diagonal parking and things like that. They can still park as many cars. And they now have festivals down there. And they went from 80% vacancy to 80% occupancy in the surrounding businesses. So that was on the square. Before they did it, this is what that same place looks like. It was the comprehensive, inclusive planning process that got from that. And walk and bike access to that central corridor was a key tenet of their guiding principles. I want to say that, right? It wasn't sort of an answer like, be nice when people walking. It was a central design tenet. Last but not least, on the economic side, making the case, is it worth the investment? Many of you have heard the trails are beneficial communities, right? And here are a couple of them. We were talking about the Erie Canal Towpath Trail. I live in Rockport, where when they have the bike ride every year, it's one of the stops. But a lot of these communities on that trail along the Erie Canal, which is a beautiful bicycle pathway, now 360 miles, I think, all the way to Buffalo, or a little more, has been instrumental to some of those economies. You've been breakfast, bike shops, other, in fact, you guys all know the 3 essential food groups of the bicyclists, don't you? Coffee in the morning, ice cream during the day, beer at night, right? So if you're in a cool coffee shop with great pastries, a great ice cream shop, and a brew pub, you're going to be printing money if you're on a bike trail. I'm just printing that money. But I'm not entirely kidding. And there are studies that talk about property value, about the economic activity that comes with these. I urge you to ride the Cape Cod Rail Trail, which you ever have. If you've not, and you're here in New England, it is a well worth effort to go ride that trail. But Mark, people don't want this in rural communities. They all say the weird guy with the mustache is going to be in the trail in my backyard, looking in our window, probably going to steal our TV and run down the trail with it, right? We've had these kinds of conversations in any number of communities. We've had this conversation, right? It's not in my backyard. To which I say, I'm in rural Kentucky, tiny little speck of a town, where they did take a rail course, started putting a bike trail along it. And they said, we were worried about the NIMBYs, not in my backyard, but now we're finding there are LIMBYs. Link it to my backyard. People actually opening up their fences and putting gates on it because this is their social space and they want to connect to the trail. All amplified during the pandemic, right? People are putting fire pits and chairs out in those exact spaces, aren't they? Right? And they're socializing along the trail because you can be a safe social distance. Barry, Sue, how are you? Great to see you guys. Come on, you sit by the fire, right? Okay. Last point. Change is scary, it's hard to do, particularly in more conservative communities, or we're just stuff. This is a totally new idea. The idea of pop-ups and demonstrations, non-permanent treatments, or very low-cost treatments, like the Billings, Montana example, really, really important. This is Anaconda, Montana, where they wanted to do curb extension. This store, which was a pharmacy, was opening up a little ice cream window, and so they were going to do a curb extension with a little seating area. So somebody just grabbed their rec room furniture, and they made a temporary one. And they had that interdisciplinary work that I was talking about before, right? People from different areas, including the fire chief, who said, I think my guys are going to be worried about being able to make the turn if we change the curb radius too much. So to their credit, rather than just throwing their hands up in despair and say, oh, I guess we can't do it, they went and got the biggest truck in the fleet and checked. And they adjusted the radius of curvature. They said, yeah, we're going to tighten it up a little bit, give them a little more room to make the turn. As opposed to, well, one voice of dismay was raised, we're going to give up. We can't do that. We have to work our way through these problems. Whitefish, Montana. You did a walk on it, you realized this road was winding up. I said, this is the kind of road you can do a protected bicycle lane if you wanted to. Kids and parents in this town are not going to let their kids ride bikes. We have a lot of logging activities. This is rural Montana, west of Glacier National Park. You can picture that part of the state. You can see one of the logging trucks in the photo there. So during Walking Bike to School Week, which is the first week in October and May every year, they created a temporary protected bicycle lane. You see it there? With literally chalk dust and little safety candles like you might use at a construction site. You guys with me on this? Temporary bike lane. Nobody's going to use it. Won't work in this town. They filled the schoolyard with bikes with this 1 week test and convinced themselves that maybe if they made appropriate infrastructure, people would be willing to let their kids ride. Might have to be protected bike lanes with vertical lineators, but we can do that. In Rio Grande, Texas, the kids help you make a temporary crosswalk by literally painting tar paper. See these white blocks, lay it down. It looks pretty darn good once you put it down. It looks like a real crosswalk. And then we invited out city officials to come walk across it, city council and so on. And at this time, somebody popped out of one of the buildings and said, I hope you're going to leave that there. It's been great. It's slowed traffic down. Awesome to have them hear one of the residents saying that, right? Admittedly, not a permanent solution, not going to last a couple of days. Great way to test the idea. And you can actually go out and collect objective data. You can take a speed gun, collect speed data. You can take a stopwatch, look at delay time, do cars yield, do traffic counts, pedestrian counts, check yielding behavior. We can use lower cost treatments. This is a curb extension with just vertical delineators and paint. This is what we're just painting the stop sign in West Jefferson. It's up in the foothills near Boone, North Carolina. Wolcott, Vermont, population 400, I think, 480, whatever they told me. Doing a workshop there with their health coalition, County Health Coalition. They said people will go to this retail cluster in the distance and then get in their car and drive 300 yards to the post office and town hall because they don't want to drive across this kind of open space, which is sort of the parking lot, the gravel parking space for the little downtown area. They won't walk 300 yards, right? Now, downtown Wolcott, Vermont should be a park once destination. You should park once, go to the store, go to the post office. Nothing is far enough to preclude that. I said, have you thought about trying to create a temporary walkway across here? Get some planters or some curb stops or something, and just test the idea. That was in April we did the workshop. In July, they sent me this photo. And these were in their local paper talking about how they created a walkway so the post office right out of here, we're down near the stores. And people, by the way, adopted these and made it a community garden. So it's an herb garden, and they grew some vegetables in it. Totally changed the conversation about what this space could be, has them thinking. By the way, in the my traffic engineering hat, that is more efficient parking. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parking spaces that I didn't have before, that I can park along the outer edge, just not the inner edges of that gravel lot. So everybody see that? Safer for everybody because there's a defined entry and exit area, created edges. Works better for cars too, because you don't have people going out to turn left and somebody trying to get around them all the time. Usually we find that we make bicycle and pedestrian improvements that are better for cars. Enosburg, Vermont, so northwest corner of Vermont, great regional planning entity up there. They wanted to do Enosburg Falls, this is actually called, curb extensions, including a trail crossing right here, but all through the downtown. So this is temporary paint. Those are just little planter boxes. Those are temporary. Those are not attached vertical delineators, all that stuff can be moved. The common complaint we have when we do this on Main Street in the downtown is a state route, which this was. We had a lot of truck traffic. The trucks are never going to make it through. But we're lucky that there's a guy, Rick Keene, who runs a truck driving educational program there. Literally, people want to get their CDL license. This is where they go, this guy. So they said, they asked Rick if he would come and drive through the area. This is him coming back and forth. And I thought, well, this will be a disaster. He's going to tell us how stupid these are. What idiot suggested this? We then had already scheduled a walkout. Everyone's walkout. That's the board of the village trustees were going to come, and a bunch of residents and the advocates. And I thought, well, there'll be a fist fight before this thing is over. We'll be out here. Well, Rick starts walking with us. There he is. This guy is like, he's got this hair, that kind of this grizzled, not a lot of work kind of guy. Comes on the walk with us. He's just some of the village board members. We go out and look at it. And he said, yeah, I think it's fantastic. He didn't say this. He said it's slow traffic. He said, and any driver who can't get around these shouldn't be driving a truck, and I won't give them a license. So I'm glad. Since I can see pedestrians better if they're out on these curb extensions, right? Shortens their crossing distance, they're on the road for less time. Well, actually call it less traffic delay, because when Mark's 85-year-old mom is crossing here, she takes a long time, right? But less time if there's less road to cross with the curb extension. He said, I make a couple of recommendations. He said, I think you should, any vertical element, you probably should bring them in 2 feet. Just so there's swing room for a vehicle, maybe make it a model. Bottom line is it was wonderfully effective. I can't say enough about how this going out and experiencing the environment is different than talking about it theoretically. And I will show you there are 2 tools that I would suggest you take advantage of, both free online. The AARP's Livable Community has a pop-up placemaking toolkit with all sorts of tips on how to do these low-cost demonstrations. And this is from Alta Planning and Design. This document shows how some of those low-cost treatments are being put in place with materials that could even be reversed. So those are 2 that I would put in my pocket as sort of tools in the toolkit to do this kind of work. And I will just say that 2 states have officially sanctioned this kind of activity. The state of Vermont and the state up here on the right and Minnesota on the left are the 2 that I'm aware of that the state DOTs have published guides. Now, why is that relevant? Even if your state hasn't yet, the ability to show them this and say to them, we might consider looking at how demonstration and low-cost quick build projects are being done in other states, including, I think it's notable, both cold weather states. There are a lot of people who say, well, this does not work in places where they have to plow snow. And interestingly, 2 snow states are the first 2 that have published this kind. So I just want that to all be underrated. Okay, last point, get us out the door. How do we get people thinking about this in a very practical way? People who aren't technicians, who aren't the kind of people that come to Walkability world, who aren't planners and engineers and bicycle advocates. And I think it's taking about experiencing the environment with an inclusive, thoughtful, open way. So, and that's why I call these inclusive interdisciplinary walkways. I'm not the public works director, the planner, and administrator from the schools, and somebody from the local economic development authority, who run all those disciplines in the health department, reflected in these conversations, and many, many more. You can think of lots of others. Housing authority, transit, if you have that. Go out and actually walk to real places. Hear the voices of those with the lived experience there across the spectrum of age and race and income and ability and disability. And important is an act of shared discovery and solutions. It's not the expert telling the community, oh, here's where you need to go from 4 lanes to 3, here's where you need a mid-block crossing, here's where you need a median aisle. It's the community collectively thinking about that and saying, what's right for our community. I, by the way, am perfectly happy to take elected officials on where that goat trail, that desire line is born, picture in the lower left there, because somebody's doing that, somebody that is their constituent is doing that every day for that path to be worn there, to get to a transit stop or something, right? Why shouldn't they have to do it at least once with me on the walk out experience? That's why I have no problem taking people out on a rainy day, by the way. Because if there's water pooling somewhere that is splashing on the kids waiting at the school bus stop, I don't like this school principal and the head of the city council to get splashed by that water too. So if you're up for it, I say we go for a walk. And while we do, I'm going to ask you to remember my 4 elements from the research literature. When I'm taking a group out, I say I want you to think of a 0 to 10 scale. 0 being it meets none of these criteria, 10 it meets all 4. So I'm not asking you to score 4 different things, like 1 score for each. We're going to walk. At points, I'm going to stop and we're going to say, let's group up and don't make me do category. When I say it's group up time, just come in close enough so we can hear each other, right? Because we're going to try to live feed this, so we want to be able to hear your voices. I'll repeat any questions for the feed. But I'm going to remind you, think about, are there things to walk to, destination? Is the network comprehensive and connected? Does it get you there in the active mode? Is it functional? Are the site designs rewarding for the pedestrians? Is it safe and accessible for all? Questions on these 4 criteria. Does everybody understand? I know it's hard to do. You're thinking about all of them, you come up with one number. You're going to come into 9 or 6 or a 2 or a 0 or a 10 if it's perfect. Questions, thoughts, comments, arguments, refutations. Nothing? Really? You're with me? How many of you would like to end the colonial because that's where your next activity is for? And if you want to just bring your bags and stuff, or do you want to come back here? And because we can kind of debrief anywhere, we can just sort of take a minute at the end to kind of enact as possible. How many say just go right to the colonial? Because our walk on across can take us. Do you mind? That means you're bringing your bags with you, right? Is everybody cool with that? So that's our plan. Let's jack it up. We'll do that. That'll be our route. But then wait. Let me show you then a couple more things you're going to get in the slide deck. It's just a couple more resources just so you know they're in here. This is my summary slide. I think there's plenty of technical information. Don't tell me we don't know how. There are people who do and they're available to you. Don't tell me it costs too much. It's a winning investment and we can do a lot of it cheap. The best thing to do is routine accommodation when you're doing other work. Don't tell me that it's too expensive to start and we don't know where. Find these low-cost reversible options. Try pop-ups and demonstrations. And using a walk like this is a great way to start the conversation with the community. I tend to bring people in afterwards. We won't do that here because we're not stakeholders in Keene, but where I'm workshopping this district, we come back inside, we get flip charts, we get maps, and we actually download our best ideas for programmatic, infrastructure project, and policy changes to support what we want to do. I call that the 3 Ps. Please.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The community gets started with this, they walk on it, they discover things, and they even write a streets policy. What advice do you have for keeping it going and keeping the thinking going?
Right.
The policy says we'll consider it all
Sure.
going, but they like forget
Right.
that they're going to consider.
So I'm going to repeat that question just in case. So we pass the complete streets policy, but how do we keep it going? Right? We pass the ordinance, maybe we do 1 or 2 great projects because there's a lot of energy. How do we keep that going? I would suggest the communities that are successful set up a citizens advisory group. Complete Streets or active transportation advisory. There are lots of different ways to do it. It's not just citizens, it's usually a mixed group. And importantly, keep this going. Every year do a walk on it. In fact, I work in communities where every year, each alderman or councilor has in their district has to host a walkabout where residents can show up, walk with them, and raise any issues. So you're constantly re-looking at the built environment and asking yourself, oh good, have you brought it up to speed? By the way, I'm doing a lot, we're talking about complete street stuff, but it could be land use decisions. Like a big talk about, do we really want to shut down the downtown elementary school and move out to the edge where every kid is going to ride back up? Or do we want to have the courage to come up with money to rebuild it and maintain that walkable downtown environment? Cool. And I want to lead you to three. These three slides are America Walks has a funding opportunity right now. It's a national advocacy, pedestrian advocacy organization. These are only $1,500 grants, but they're enough to buy paint and cones and some of these pop-up materials. AARP, they do a little community challenge every year or so. They've got great materials, but they also do a grant program. And get this, the National Association of Realtors have a grant program. You can get grants from, I think, $1,500 up to $15,000 for smart growth type projects around this, like this kind of stuff. You have to partner with your local chapter, the Association of Realtors. But I think that's a good thing. Connect with your Realtors Association and get that applied. Questions, thoughts, comments, protests? Now you ready to walk?
Let's go.
No, I just wanted you to know this is awesome. Are you ready to go there or not? No? You want us to sit somewhere? She's up back there waving the whole time. All right, out we go.
I'm done ended.
No, no.
For folks in the live.
Matthew's gonna.
A couple minutes here to regroup outside and we'll
Hopefully you're with us.
to the field. Yeah.
We shall meet you out the front door. Hey, you're looking for me? You want this microphone back?
Yes, please. That will not reach where you're going. Thank you. So when are you going to dial in?
When I
Get outside?
Signal in here is a little.
Okay.
If I turn on the sound on this computer so that I can hear what the live stream is, will that be a problem?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm gonna do that just so that I can be chatting with people.
Yeah, just turn your microphone off.
Turn the microphone off, just, okay.
That's what we're going to do. My hand over the group. You're going to shout churning on what your number is. So when we stop, you're really
Wait, are you checking on the number question? It's 0. 10's good, 0's bad. 10 means I saw a variety of destinations. The transportation network was good. Modes, walk, bike, and transit. It felt details were rewarding for a pedestrian, not punishing, right? Makes us want to get out safe. Got it? So you would give a 10 if it had all of those. You'd give a 0 if it had none. That, everybody good with that? All right, let's stroll. At least 3 blocks this way to that big light. Parking meter on your left. Your job is to watch and make sure I don't miss we're chatting. So you've got to not blow that. Everybody come up close enough so we can chat. I'm going to ask you here thinking about our crossing.
Christine.
Christine's watching for the walk signal. So there are buttons for me to push to cross. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah.
If they work. How do you know if they work? I pushed it. How do I know if it's working or not? Right. I get a signal that tells me. So there's a case to be made. Auditory. The newer ones would have an auditory setup that when I touch it, it would go ding and tell me. And might even say wait. And then I get an auditory signal when it's ready to walk. That would be a more inclusive treatment. Better than not. But what this is, there's not a pedestrian timing every cycle. But I have to press this button to ask for the little white walk signal to come up. The button is. Why would a traffic engineer want that?
Because they're assuming that they're...
They can move more cars if they don't create time enough for us to cross. Let's see how many seconds come up with the walk signal. They're going to have put in some number of seconds for us to get all the way across.
These here, further down, they're very quick.
Yep.
And around the circle, it's...
Because there's so many vehicle movements they have to accommodate. And the engineer has a real challenge to make that have a phase and that have a phase.
No, these are all synchronized, so
Yeah.
the mantra and the whole square at the same time.
Oh, really? So everything is frozen right now?
It's crossing.
Ah. This one.
We're on right now. I mean, it's already...
He says when the hand is flashing, and this is one of the other problems, most people don't understand and why I love the flashing red hand only means don't stop, right? If you're in the crowd, that is sometimes, of course you didn't, sometimes they put some white signal, walk, flashing hand, continue if you're out there, but don't have enough time to get across, and then there'll be the hard, got it?
I saw that sign already.
Okay.
How long you have to get across? Like...
The one had a countdown, but this one didn't.
Yeah.
No, that's right. Yeah. Right. All right, because we're a long group. Remember, right? When one. Okay, let's keep walking this way. Let's go. Keep your. Oh, yeah. Good. It's such a good-looking crew. I need a picture. Keep walking. That's all right. I get most hit all the time. So I'm seeing your Keene, but your Keene logo. Nice. Have we met before? Did we ever meet when I done any? Yeah. So that's what I wondered if we. Oh yeah, from our here, from a workshop that we did. It was a great workshop. I mean, it's a great, much good stuff. So it's fun for people to see the positive stuff, but you can go a couple of stuff that's imperfect. Not a big deal, but that's the real world, right? And it's possible to do everything at once, so that's not unreasonable. Oh, well, that's very sweet. You're very kind. Thanks. And thank you for making the time. Awesome. I wonder if anybody will mention like that, sometimes for the edge, right? And sometimes they don't. So this is interesting. Intrigued. I had forgotten the library's back here, post office there, right? That's audit. And then where's the post office branch?
It's
How, when you say all the way, like all the way down to the bigger section? Yeah, I was going to say it. Yeah, okay, yeah, then that's not that far. I mean, it's still a stretch of three blocks. Yep. To do. Yeah, well, it is right back here. The classic, sort of with the chiseled United States Post Office.
Oh yeah, okay. That's now like an office building or something.
You said the newspaper's in there.
Isn't there where the Civic was? Fenton.
Ah.
One is the former post.
Got What is
This building. For where they like for all like computers and
Uh-oh, sinkhole. That does not look like an intentional thing. We're gonna go left, but we're gonna talk right people out of the street. Do you think it's okay to step in here? Will Colony House care? Come on in here. Come on, this guy. Number for this first section. What are the 4 criteria? What are the 4 things I've told you you don't have to look toward the sun? So I'm going to go this way. So you look toward me. If you're a facilitator leading a walkout, don't stand blind. All right. What are the 4 elements I told you? Variety of vistas is a lot of destinations, right? Destinations was 1, mix of land. Yeah, the details of design. I'll say that's building at the street versus set street furnishings. You skipped 1. All modes. All right. All. Connectivity. The work of physics. So it's land. Think of it on 3 scales. The macro land use. The mesoscale is in those land uses, and the micro scale are the details of design, and they have to be safe and accessible for all. Okay. Number. 1 number in your head. Does everybody have one? Okay. A group like this, and as I go by you, you're out in your outside voice, loud enough for everybody. Your number for that section. There are no right or wrong answers based on what other pieces are valid. Okay, this is important. So you're going to just say your number nice and loud. Does everybody understand what's happening? I'm going to start way back here. Go.
4, 6, 5, 7, 4, 7, 5, 6, 6, 5, 6, 6.
Did everybody else hear that? And if I do my math right, I'm adding and dividing. I got a 5 to 4. Round up 5.8. 4. Okay. I did that? Okay. We didn't give it a 10. We didn't give it a 0. Why not a 10? Score from being a 10. That lowered your score. No real designated space. Bicyclists would end up riding where? Probably. Or sidewalk, possibly, right? Excellent. What else might lower your score? Not, what else?
Not connected to things very well.
No, you felt it's not so well connected, right? It's kind of a long lot of sort of turn opportunities. Somebody in a wheelchair. Stroller, I'm back to you with your stroller. That could be a challenge.
Multiple lanes of traffic.
So it's a kind of a heavy traffic-y feel. Huh? Is that what you're thinking? Yeah. Negatives?
Just the shape of everything. There's just a lot of straight lines.
Yeah.
There was one shot where there were like trees and
Hey, that's sort of organic. Okay, yeah. Good. And yeah, issues like physical, like trip hazards and things like that. And that's why I'd love to have somebody, from that community with me on the walk, because that right out. But thank you for catching it.
no room for street trees.
Yeah, right. We can get a lot of natural shade. You got getting street tree shade. Any others? Score. I'm just scanning along. You can just jump out.
But there was also pooling.
A lot of standing water. Yeah.
Some of it might.
And when I walked it an hour and a half ago when it was raining heavily, I got a couple of big hits. And that's as much about the design criteria to have the sidewalk right at the curb. Sidewalk at the curb edge, you're going to get that effect where you... Anything? It's okay. You can say it. She works in the planning department here, so she doesn't want to, but we take it in the most constructive way.
Well, I think most of it's already been.
Okay, good.
Having shade trees.
Yeah, shade trees are important. Yeah.
You mentioned one that no one said yet. Bush that was really grown into the sidewalk and
Nobody did say it. But do you realize how important that was? Two person using a cane would walk right into that thing. It's up here.
I commented, I really liked the wide side there.
Yes, because there were two-person, it was a sidewalk till you came to that, and then you would have had some catch. Why didn't we give it a 0? We still gave it we still take care, a 5.8, right? What was my math? 5.8. Give me a positive. We made it, there were some.
The sidewalks for the most part were really good.
Yeah, pretty wide sidewalk repair. Yeah, there's a sidewalk. There's a lot of America where our starting criteria better than not any. Good.
And we did, not on the side of the street we were on, but across the street there's a trail off for a bus and a covered spot.
Excellent. Thank you for catching that. I was concerned right in front of. Yes, so we have destinations, important destinations. Thank you. Well, positive.
I had one. Oh my God.
Good.
I was going to say
I was gonna say because I've seen worse.
Yo, yeah. Right. You got to have room in your score. I can't get in a lot of trouble because I've been in a lot of zeros.
generally it's an attractive street.
What about architecture, right? Some good historic architecture. There's some things about that.
Feel safe.
Safe. Do you feel safe walking here at 9 at night in the dark? I don't know. Yes. We will sometimes intentionally do walk audits in the evening to answer that very question, but it's a good one. Positives?
Lots of interesting small businesses.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, especially in that first place.
The street crossings.
Great. So remember, we started crossing, long though it was, well defined. There was an all-stop phase that got really important. Anything else you want to add? Positive? Oh, wow! That's such a subtle one, and some people miss it. Do you hear what she said? She said, we didn't have a lot of, sort of blind trees or cross streets. Sorry, the library, a business across the street here. But in general, we were walking on a walk, weren't we? Without fear of lots of crossing. Yeah. See, now, are there one or two things we might do to immediately to sort of improve this one is of things we could do in the reasonably short term based on what we just talked about. Tomorrow! Maybe this afternoon we could get out there with hedges. What's the second thing? We could think about some bike racks. We could go back to the Hannah Grimes. I remember my first one was those bike racks or something. Could we look at a couple of places where water is pooling here and say Public Works will make sure that our grading and our water flow is, and it might even be that they're plugged, that we've caught, there's a dirt pile that a street sweep might even. So the important point is not everything is $1 million project, and we got to constantly remind walks because people can start to own answers. Like the Scouts might say, hey, if we could find who that proper Boy Scout or a Girl Scout project, we'll come and trim that hedge for that. It's an elderly person who lives in that house. We'll do it for us. We can own the solutions. Great, cool. Now, station around the sort of the highway-like character of the road you guys talked about and bringing traffic speeds down. Sure, but that thing, and we can engage in that too. I really like having low-hanging fruit on a workshop like this, that we can do something. Cool? Great, really. Hey, where's the bike? Is it up there? Did I just pick it up? Oh, I see a rack. Yes, and I wondered if there was some around back. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Because there's parking on the backside. The next street over. Perfect. Good. So that's all good. Because I was going to say, public institution really logical. You remember our shark was at the library. Okay, good. We're going to do another block. Going to be a different character here because we know the character. You as the facilitator, if you're doing this in your community, you want to be at points where the score might change dramatically, up or down, because the character changes over to the parallel street. And remember, we're just doing this as an exercise. If we were really workshopping here, we would advocacy organizations and plan a route that was relevant to where maybe a road is about to be new developments cool in anticipation of those kinds of opportunities.
On Main Street, though?
Yeah, our whole Main.
We're redesigning Main Street right now.
Somebody told me that. A little. Watch this step right here, guys. Okay. A little different, right? Tell me if somebody's about to hit me. Too much of this. So you're got that camera. That's right. That's right.
Like, oh, you need to put this down there. There's other ways to talk about it.
That's right. And I think we have to. It is systems. It's a system. I was training, and it was all system science. Let's make sure we keep watching here. It was all system science. I'm right with you. You guys, go ahead and squeeze up if you. So the trail is it called the Cheshire Trail? Cheshire Rail Trail. But it also see those pedestrians over there? It goes that way there. There's a little sign. Of those women, there's a little sign that tells you if you were coming from downtown. Did we get a walk-in? Scramble timing. Do you know that? a four-way all-way stop? I think it is. Because you've got a lot going on here. You're right near downtown. You've got all those destinations, those shops. Keep watching here. I think what's going to, all the traffic's going to stop. Yeah, and we got both. We could go there and there. We could do two legs if there were enough time. It may not. But does everybody have to wait? But when it stopped everybody. So we're not worrying about it. We were reducing the turn happening and taking us out.
I'm from West. It's like, what is this?
So some people call it scramble time. There are places where, like if this is near a university campus or something like that, they'll actually lines that don't go all the way across 5 or 6 feet to indicate that that's a crossing that says pedestrian may cross diagonally. Make sure that because all 4 legs have something that's needed here, but it is a treatment. If you run across it, that was an intentional part. Now the trait for me as a pedestrian, because I got to wait for both directions to potentially, right? They go, these guys have green, then everybody stop, but then I have a nice, safe pedestrian crossing. Near Tufts Unip is where I teach. I have that, and it works great because students have looked for it because which is one of the strong cross directions. Let's real quickly score that cell. So that little short segment that we did, just coming down, remind me of the street. School, thank you. So everybody number. Ready? Nice and loud, go.
4. 4. 3. 4. 2. 3. 2.
3.
I think I got 2 to 5. Strong around 3, right? So we're on maybe. Okay, why this dropped a lot? What were some of the things that dropped us from half of the last?
Sidewalks. Yeah, a lot of this.
Right, when we think about land use, is when a parking lot on this side and a fairly big parking lot on that side, yeah, here. But right adjoining me, for my third criteria, the details of design, maybe a nod to the fact that it's softened by good plantings along the edge, right? It wasn't, there's not just a curve of a pickup truck right next to me. But still, I think we'd all agree that's not our, and we see communities, is that a way excess parking from a business that was once there? Is there a reason that there's a big empty lot there? Do you know offhand?
Yeah.
So there are times when it's full?
Not as full as it used to be.
I've never seen it full.
Okay, so it strikes me that if I were sort of thinking about what in a strip of redevelopment along this edge and this edge, right, an L shape, somebody had that property and we're going to redevelopment, it would not at all be uncommon for the what? An L inverted, such that all the parking was out front here and the developing would be in the back. And I would require, and in fact we wrote the zoning in you, they would be required to go the other way. They could do interior parking, but we would want the built.
We now have a form-based code here. So
Nice! Does anybody tell us what that is very briefly? Short version.
You use the built environment, the form is in principle rather than the uses.
So saying this is housing that with one, this is R2, meaning residential, 2 density, maybe 2 units per acre, commercial, and this is B business. Let's say things in this district ought to look like they should be. We're in a downtown area. They should be at the street, in front of the street, and they should have this much sort of artic wall, right, and sort of giving a picture of the kind of things you might include in yours, right? Do whatever the market will put in there. I mean, not like nudie bars, but retail on the first floor and housing above, but if there's not enough housing yet, somebody could put housing later, or vice versa, right? Anything else about it that we would want to know?
Yes, I'm trying to remember.
Or are you going to make a Fenton amendment your form-based amendment in and bring the dang building to the street.
And so what we have in the downtown core, they have,
Yeah.
I think this is the downtown road. You have to build it between 0 and 5 feet.
It's not enough setback to park a car in front of it.
No,
And some will
anywhere in Keene now, you can't put parking.
for that because that's an easy criteria to put in, no front side parking. Okay. Why did things about this stretch?
I didn't like that the narrow.
It got narrower.